The massive doors of the Galactic Council chamber slid open with a deep hum. Ambassador Lisa Martinez walked through first, her black diplomatic uniform crisp and clean. Behind her came two humans in simple gray uniforms. Captain Jake Stevens walked on her left, and Lieutenant Amy Collins walked on her right. They moved with calm, steady steps across the polished metal floor. The chamber was huge. It could hold thousands of beings from across the galaxy. Today, it was full. Representatives from dozens of alien species sat in curved rows that rose up like a great bowl. Each species had brought their own guards, just like the humans had. But something was very different about the human guards. Every other guard in the chamber carried weapons, big weapons. The reptilian Zephyrians had their guards holding plasma rifles that glowed with green energy. The rock-like granite people had guards with massive hammer guns that could crush steel. The insect-like hive warriors carried weapons that shot acid. Even the peaceful-looking Etherian collective had guards with stun weapons that could drop. A charging beast, but Jake Stevens and Amy Collins carried nothing at all. No weapons, no armor, no shields. They walked with empty hands at their sides. The alien representatives began to notice. Whispers started in the back rows and spread forward. Like ripples in water, the Zephyrians made low hissing sounds. The crystal beings called Altarians made chiming noises that sounded like broken glass. The furry woodland alliance chittered and squeaked. "Look at the humans," whispered a Zephyrian delegate to his neighbor. "Their guards have no weapons." "Perhaps they forgot them," replied another alien, this one from the Aquatic Federation. His voice bubbled like water in a tank. "Or perhaps they think they need no protection," growled a representative from the Krulix Empire. His massive form was covered in natural armor plates. "How foolish!" The whispers grew louder. Some aliens pointed at the human guards. Others leaned forward in their seats to get a better look. A few even stood up, unable to believe what they were seeing. Ambassador Martinez reached the center of the chamber floor. This was where each delegation would speak. She stopped and turned to face the Great Council. Jake and Amy stopped too, one on each side of her. They stood perfectly still, their eyes scanning the crowd of aliens around them. The council chamber had been designed to show the power of each species. The seats were arranged so that the strongest, most dangerous species sat closest to the center. The Krulix Empire, the Zephyrian Dominion, and the Granite Collective all had front row seats. These were the species that had conquered star systems and destroyed entire planets. But even these powerful species were confused by what they saw. Every one of their guards was ready for battle. The Krulix warriors wore full battle armor and carried plasma cannons. The Zephyrian guards had energy shields and poison dart guns. The Granite guards were so big they could barely fit in their seats, and their weapons were the size of small trees. Council leader Vex Thul sat in the highest seat in the chamber. He was from the Hegemony, the oldest and most powerful group in the galaxy. His species looked like tall, thin humans, but their skin was blue and their eyes were solid black. They had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years. Vexthul raised one long arm. The chamber fell silent. His voice echoed through the great room when he spoke. "We welcome the human delegation to this gathering," he said. His voice was cold and formal. "However, we must address a matter of protocol." Lisa Martinez stood straight and tall. She did not look nervous, even though thousands of alien eyes were watching her. Jake and Amy did not move at all. "The Galactic Council has rules," Vexthul continued. "All diplomatic guards must be properly equipped for their duties. They must carry weapons and defensive gear. This is not just tradition, it is law." Murmurs ran through the chamber again. Some aliens nodded their agreement. Others looked angry. A few species had fought wars over smaller insults than this. "Yet," Vexthul said, and his black eyes fixed on Jake and Amy, The human guards carry nothing. They have no weapons, no armor, no shields. They appear to be defenseless. The word defenseless hit the chamber like a stone thrown into still water. The reaction was immediate. Some aliens laughed. Others hissed or growled. A few stood up and shouted in languages that the translation devices could not handle. "Is this an insult?" roared Counselor Thakmer from the Krulix Empire. He was nearly 10 feet tall and covered in thick armor plating. His guards behind him were even bigger. "Do the humans think so little of this council that they send unprotected servants?" "Perhaps they are fools," said another voice. This came from the Acid Spitter Collective. "Perhaps they do not understand the dangers of galactic politics." Or, "Perhaps," hissed a Zephyrian, "they have weapons hidden somewhere. Perhaps this is a trick." Lisa Martinez listened to all of this without changing her expression. She waited until the noise died down a little. Then she took one step forward. "Honored Council Leader," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber, "I request permission to address the Council's concerns." Vexthal studied her for a long moment. His black eyes seemed to look right through her. Then he looked at Jake and Amy. They stood like statues, calm and alert. "Very well," he said finally. "Explain to this council why your guards carry no weapons. Explain why you show such confidence. In the chamber full of warriors." Lisa Martinez smiled. It was a small smile, but somehow it made several aliens in the front rows shift uncomfortably in their seats. "I would be happy to explain," she said. "But I think a demonstration would be more effective than words." The chamber erupted in noise again. Some aliens shouted challenges. Others demanded to know what the human meant. A few species began to prepare their own guards, just in case. Through it all, Jake Stevens and Amy Collins stood perfectly still. They did not reach for weapons they did not have. They did not look nervous or afraid. They simply watched and waited, as if they knew something that no one else in the chamber understood, and perhaps they did. The noise in the chamber grew louder. Aliens were standing up now, pointing at the human guards and talking in angry voices. Some were even shouting. The translation devices worked overtime, filling the air with dozens of different languages. All at once, Counselor Thakmer of the Krulix Empire rose from his seat. He was massive, even by Krulix standards. His armor was black metal with red marks that showed his rank. Behind him, 3 Krulix guards stood up too. They were nearly as big as he was, and their weapons were the size of small cannons. "This is enough," Thakmer's voice boomed across the chamber. The sound was so deep it made the metal floor vibrate. "The humans mock this council. They mock all of us." He pointed one armored finger at Jake and Amy. "Those are not guards. Those are servants. Weak, defenseless servants. No warrior enters the sacred chamber of the Galactic Council without weapons. It is an insult to every species here." More aliens stood up. The acid spitters hissed their agreement. The granite people made rumbling sounds like distant thunder. Even some of the peaceful species looked upset. "The Krulix speak truth," said a representative from the Iron Claw Syndicate. Her species looked like giant metal spiders. "Proper guards carry proper weapons. These humans show disrespect." But not everyone agreed. A delegate from the Etherian Collective floated up from his seat. The Etherians looked like clouds of glowing gas in the shape of people. They were peaceful and wise, and other species often listened to them. "Perhaps," the Etherian said in a voice like soft wind, "we should not judge so quickly. Every species has its own ways. The humans have the right to follow their customs." This made the warrior species even angrier. A Zephyrian stood up her scales changing color from green to angry red. "Customs?" She hissed. "What custom allows guards to be helpless? What custom puts diplomats in danger?" The chamber was getting more and more divided. Some species supported the humans' right to their own ways. Others saw it as a challenge to the old rules. The warrior species were the angriest of all. Ambassador Martinez watched all of this calmly. She did not look worried, even though the situation was getting dangerous. Political fights in the Galactic Council had started wars before. Jake and Amy stood beside her, still as statues. Thekmer stepped down from his seat and walked toward the center of the chamber. His heavy footsteps echoed like drumbeats. His 3 guards followed him, their weapons ready. "I challenge the human guards," he announced. "I invoke the right of demonstration." The chamber fell silent. The right of demonstration was an old law. It allowed any species to challenge another species to prove their ways were better. Usually, it was used to settle arguments about trade or territory. But it could be used for anything. Council leader Vexthol looked down at the scene. His black eyes showed no emotion. "The right of demonstration is invoked," he said. "Ambassador Martinez, do you accept?" Lisa Martinez looked at Thekmer. The Krulix warrior was twice her size and covered in armor. His guards were even bigger. Their weapons could punch holes through starship hulls. Then she looked at her own guards. Jake and Amy had not moved. They did not look scared. "I accept," she said clearly. The chamber erupted again. Some aliens cheered. Others made worried noises. A few started placing bets on how long the human guards would last. "The demonstration will take place in the Council Combat Chamber," Vexthol announced. "Standard rules apply. The scenario will be a hostage rescue. The Krulix guards will play the role of hostile forces. The human guards will attempt to complete the rescue." This was perfect for the Krulix. Hostage rescue was one of their specialties. Their weapons and armor were designed for exactly this kind of fight. The humans had no weapons at all. "This will be over quickly," laughed one of the Krulix guards. His voice was like rocks grinding together. "The soft humans will run away," said another. But Thekmer was studying Jake and Amy more carefully. Something about the way they stood bothered him. They were too calm, too ready. Most beings would be nervous before facing Krulix warriors, but these 2 humans looked almost eager. "What are the victory conditions?" Ambassador Martinez asked. "Simple," Vexthol replied. "Your guards must rescue the simulated hostages and neutralize the Krulix forces. If they succeed, the human way of having unarmed guards will be accepted. If they fail... double quote, he did not need to finish. Everyone knew what would happen if they failed. The humans would be set away from the council. Their species would be marked as too weak for galactic politics. And if we win," Ambassador Martinez said, "I want something in return." The chamber got quiet again. It was bold of her to make demands. "What do you want?" Vexthol asked. "I want the council to listen to a full explanation of why human guards carry no weapons. I want every species here to understand the truth." Some aliens laughed at this. Others looked curious. What truth could there be? The humans clearly had no weapons. What was there to understand? "Agreed," Vexthol said. "Prepare for the demonstration." As they moved toward the combat chamber, alien representatives followed to watch. Some were excited to see a fight. Others were nervous about what might happen. A few wise species were starting to wonder if they were missing something important. The betting started immediately. Most aliens bet that the Krulix would win in less than 2 minutes. A few thought the humans might last 5 minutes if they were lucky. Only the Etherian collective refused to bet at all. "Why do you not wager?" asked a granite delegate. The Etherian's glowing form flickered thoughtfully. "Because," he said quietly, "I have learned not to underestimate species that surprise me, and the humans. They surprise me very much." Jake Stevens and Amy Collins walked toward the combat chamber with steady steps. They did not look back at the watching aliens. They did not seem worried about the weapons pointed at them. In fact, if anyone had looked closely, they might have noticed that both humans were smiling slightly, very slightly, but in the excitement of the moment, no one won. Looking that closely, that would turn out to be a mistake. The council combat chamber was smaller than the main hall, but still huge. It was designed to test the skills of the galaxy's best warriors. The walls were made of strong metal that could stop plasma blasts. The floor was covered with obstacles, like walls, boxes, and computer terminals. Everything looked real, but it was all part of the simulation. In the center of the chamber, 3 holographic figures appeared. They looked like ordinary civilians from different species. These were the hostages that needed to be rescued. The computer would judge if they were saved or killed during the fight. The 3 Krulix guards took their positions. They were even more frightening in the combat chamber than they had been in the council hall. Their black armor reflected the lights. Their weapons hummed with deadly energy. Each weapon could blast through a tank. The first Krulix guard was named Grak. He carried a plasma cannon that was bigger than most humans. The second guard was Thok. His weapon shot explosive rounds that could level buildings. The third guard was Vess. She had twin energy rifles that could fire 100 shots without stopping. They spread out across the chamber, using the walls and obstacles for cover. This was what they had trained for their whole lives. They were professional warriors, from a species that had conquered dozens of worlds. Jake Stevens and Amy Collins stood at the entrance to the chamber. They had no weapons, no armor, no special equipment. They wore the same simple gray uniforms they had worn in the council hall. Above them, hundreds of alien representatives watched through thick glass windows. Most of them were already counting down the seconds until the humans would be defeated. "This is almost sad," said a Zephyrian delegate. "Those poor humans have no idea what they are facing." "The Krulix will end this in 30 seconds, agreed a Granite representative. "Maybe less," laughed an Ironclaw delegate. Only a few aliens looked worried. The Etherian Collective delegate was one of them. Something about the way the humans stood bothered him. They were too calm for beings about to face certain defeat. Council leader Vexthil's voice echoed through the chamber. "The demonstration will begin in 10 seconds. Krulix guards, take your final positions. Human guards, prepare yourselves." Grak, Thok, and Vess moved behind strong barriers. They aimed their weapons at the entrance. The plan was simple. The humans would have to come through the entrance to reach the hostages. When they did, the Krulix would shoot them down immediately. 5 seconds, Vexthil announced. Jake looked at Amy. She nodded slightly. They both took a deep breath. "Begin." What happened next shocked every alien in the observation area. Instead of running forward like most warriors would, Jake and Amy split up immediately. But they did not run to different sides of the chamber. Jake dropped to the floor and rolled behind a computer console. Amy jumped up and grabbed a pipe that ran along the ceiling. "What are they doing?" asked a confused acid spitter delegate. The Krulix guards were confused too. They had expected the humans to charge forward or maybe try to hide behind the walls. Instead, Jake was doing something to the computer console, and Amy was crawling along the ceiling pipes like some kind of animal. Grak decided to end this quickly. He aimed his plasma cannon at the console where Jake was hiding and fired. The blast should have destroyed both the console and the human behind it, but Jake was not behind the console anymore. Somehow he had moved. The plasma blast hit the console and destroyed it, but there was no human body in the wreckage. "Where did he go?" Thok growled. The answer came from above. Amy had reached a ventilation grate in the ceiling. She kicked it open and disappeared inside. Now both humans were out of sight. "This is not how combat works," Vess said, looking around nervously. "Where are they?" The watching aliens were just as confused. Combat was supposed to be about weapons and armor and strength. But the humans seemed to be playing by different rules. Suddenly, all the lights in the chamber went out. Emergency lighting came on a moment later, but it was dim and red. The chamber looked completely different now. Shadows were everywhere. The obstacles that had seemed clear before now looked like hiding places. How did they turn off the lights? Grak demanded. The main power coupling. Amy's voice came from somewhere in the darkness. Jake found it behind that console you shot. Thanks for the distraction. The Krulix guards spun around, trying to find where the voice had come from. But the acoustics of the chamber made it impossible to tell. Then things got worse for the Krulix. The artificial gravity in one section of the chamber shut off. Thok, who had been leaning against a wall, suddenly found himself floating toward the ceiling. What is happening? He shouted, waving his heavy weapon around. Environmental controls. Jake's voice answered from a different direction. Every building has them. You just have to know where to look. In the observation area, aliens were standing up and pressing against the glass. This was not the kind of fight they had expected to see. How are they doing this? Asked a Woodland Alliance delegate. They are using the chamber itself as a weapon, the Etherian Collective representative said quietly. Fascinating. Down in the chamber, the Krulix guards were getting desperate. They could not see their enemies. The environment kept changing around them. And somehow, the humans seemed to know exactly where everything was. Vess tried to use her twin rifles to spray the entire chamber with energy blasts. But as soon as she started firing, foam began pouring from the ceiling fire suppression system. The foam covered her weapon sights and made it impossible to aim. The fire system activates when it detects energy weapon discharge, Amy explained helpfully. Standard safety feature. By now, all three Krulix guards were struggling. Grak was slipping on the foam. Thok was still floating near the ceiling, unable to get down. Vess could not see through the foam covering her helmet. Then Jake appeared. Behind Grak, the human moved so quietly that the big warrior did not notice until Jake tapped him on the shoulder. Excuse me, Jake said politely. Grak spun around, raising his plasma cannon. But Jake was already moving. He grabbed a piece of broken metal from the destroyed console and jammed it into the cannon's power coupling. The weapon sparked and died. Before Grak could react, Jake used the warrior's own momentum to flip him over. The big Krulix crashed to the floor, his armor making a sound like a falling building dot at the same time. Amy dropped from a ceiling vent right behind Vess. She landed silently and used a simple martial arts move to pressure point on Vess's neck. The Krulix warrior dropped unconscious. That left Thok still floating near the ceiling. Amy found the gravity controls and turned them back on. Thok fell to the floor with a crash that shook the whole chamber dot in less than 5 minutes. 2 unarmed humans had defeated 3 of the Krulix, Empire's best warriors. The chamber was completely silent. The 3 holographic hostages flickered and changed color to green, indicating they had been successfully rescued. Jake and Amy stood in the center of the chamber, not even breathing hard. They looked up at the observation windows where hundreds of aliens stared down at them in complete shock. The silence stretched on and on. Finally, a small voice from the observation area broke it. How? The silence in the observation area lasted for a full minute. Hundreds of alien representatives stared down at the combat chamber where 2 humans stood calmly among 3 defeated Krulix warriors. The most feared fighters in the galaxy had been beaten by beings who carried no weapons at all. Finally, Council Leader Vekthul found his voice. Return to the main chamber, he announced. The human delegation will now provide their explanation. The walk back felt different this time. Aliens stepped aside to let Jake and Amy pass. Some looked at them with fear, others with curiosity, a few with something that might have been respect. The 3 Krulix guards had to be helped back to their seats. They were not seriously hurt, but their pride was destroyed. Counselor Thukmer, looked at his defeated warriors, and said nothing. Back in the main chamber, Ambassador Martinez took her place at the center. Jake and Amy stood beside her, exactly as they had before, but now every eye in the chamber was fixed on them. "You promised an explanation," Vexthal said. His voice was carefully controlled, but everyone could hear the tension underneath. "Speak." Lisa Martinez looked around the chamber. She saw fear, confusion, and anger in the faces watching her. These aliens had thought they understood humans. Now they realized they understood nothing at all. "You want to know why we don't carry weapons?" she began. Her voice carried clearly through the silent chamber. "The answer is simple. Humans don't need to carry weapons. We are weapons." Several aliens made sounds of disbelief, but no one laughed. Not after what they had just seen. "Every species in this chamber evolved differently," Martinez continued. "The Krulix evolved thick armor and great strength. The Zephyrians evolved poison and speed. The Granite people evolved to be nearly indestructible. Each species developed one or two special abilities that helped them survive." She paused and looked around the chamber again. "Humans evolved something different. We evolved the ability to adapt, to learn, to use everything around us as a tool or a weapon." Captain Jake Stevens stepped forward. In his hands he held a simple communication device. It was the kind that every delegate in the chamber carried. "This is a standard council communicator," he said, holding it up so everyone could see. "Most species use it for one thing: communication." His hands moved quickly, taking the device apart. Within seconds, he had separated it into dozens of small pieces. Then, just as quickly, he began putting the pieces back together, but he was connecting them in a different way. "Humans see this differently," he said as he worked. "We see 17 different components that can be combined in hundreds of ways." He finished working and held up 3 different objects. They looked nothing like the original communicator. "This one," he said, holding up the first object, "is now a cutting tool. Sharp enough to slice through most metals." He demonstrated by easily cutting through a piece of the podium's metal trim. "This one," he held up the second object, "is a medical scanner. It can detect heart rates, blood chemistry, and nervous system activity." He pointed it at a nearby Zephyrian delegate. Numbers appeared on a small screen. "Your heart rate is elevated," he told the surprised alien. "And this one," he held up the third object, "is a lock-picking device. It can bypass most electronic security systems." He walked over to a sealed maintenance panel and touched the device to it. The panel clicked open. The chamber was dead silent. Every alien was staring at the 3 objects that had been one communicator. Just moments before Lieutenant Amy Collins stepped forward next. She looked around the chamber, studying the architecture, the lighting, the ventilation systems, everything. "In this chamber," she said, "I can identify 43 different ways to disable the security systems, 67 ways to cut off the power, 92 ways to block the exits, and 138 ways to create weapons from the furniture and equipment." She walked over to a nearby chair. It was made of metal and looked completely ordinary. With a few quick movements, she had twisted one of the legs until it came free. Now she held a perfect metal staff. "Chair leg becomes a staff," she said. Then she bent the staff at an angle. "Staff becomes a pry bar." She bent it again. "Pry bar becomes a hook for climbing." Another adjustment. "Hook becomes a lever for moving heavy objects." She set the metal piece down and picked up a decorative plant from beside a delegate's seat. It was a pretty blue flower in a ceramic pot. "The plant produces oxygen," she said. "The soil contains minerals that can be processed into explosives. The pot can be broken into sharp fragments or used as a throwing weapon. The water in the soil can be purified for drinking or used to conduct electricity. Every alien in the chamber was now looking at their own surroundings with new eyes. The chairs they sat in, the devices they carried, the decorations around them. Suddenly, everything looked dangerous. Ambassador Martinez spoke again. Other species look at a room and see a room. Humans look at a room and see 1,000 possibilities. We see tools, weapons, escape routes, hiding places, and opportunities. A delegate from the Aquatic Federation raised a tentacle nervously. But surely this is just training. Surely your guards are specially educated. Martinez shook her head. Every human child learns this way of thinking. We call it problem solving. We teach it in our schools, use it in our jobs, and practice it in our games. For humans, looking at the world this way is as natural as breathing. She gestured to Jake and Amy. These guards are not special super soldiers. They are ordinary humans who happen to work in security. Any human adult could have done what they just did. The implications of this statement hit the chamber like a wave. If any human could do this, then every human was potentially as dangerous as Jake and Amy had just proven to be. This is why human diplomats feel safe with unarmed guards, Martinez continued. Because we know that in any environment, with any available materials, humans can defend themselves. We don't need to carry weapons because we can make weapons from anything. She looked directly at Counselor Thakmer. Your warriors are brave and strong. Their weapons are powerful, but they can only fight in the ways they were trained. Humans can fight in ways that haven't been invented yet. Thakmer stared back at her. His armor suddenly seemed less impressive. His weapons seemed smaller. For the first time in his life, the great Krulix warrior felt truly afraid. There is something else you should understand, Martinez said. Humans prefer peace. We like to solve problems without violence. But the reason we can afford to be peaceful is because we are very, very good at violence when we need to be. She smiled, and somehow that smile was more frightening than any weapon in the chamber. We don't carry weapons because we don't need to. We are the weapons. And perhaps, just perhaps, that is the most human thing of all. The Galactic Council chamber had never been so quiet. Ambassador Martinez finished speaking and stood waiting for a response. Jake Stevens and Amy Collins remained beside her, calm as always. But the hundreds of alien representatives sat in shocked silence. Every being in the chamber was thinking the same thing. They had been sitting in a room full of humans for hours. Humans who could turn anything into a weapon. Humans who could find ways to fight that no one had ever imagined. And they had thought the humans were helpless. Council leader Vexthal was the first to find his voice. The demonstration is concluded, he said slowly. The human method of diplomatic security is accepted by this council. A few aliens clapped politely, but most were still too stunned to react. They kept looking at their chairs, their communicators, even their clothes, wondering what a human could do with them. Ambassador Martinez nodded respectfully. Thank you, Council Leader. The human delegation is honored to participate in galactic politics. But the session was far from over. One by one, representatives began to stand up. They had questions. Lots of questions. The first was a delegate from the Peaceful Garden Collective. His species looked like walking plants and had never fought a war in their entire history. Ambassador Martinez, he said in a voice like rustling leaves, if humans are so dangerous, how can we trust you? How do we know you will not use these abilities against us? This was the question that really mattered. The chamber fell silent. Again, waiting for the answer, Martinez smiled, and this time it was a warm, friendly smile. Because humans learned something else during our evolution. We learned that cooperation is better than conflict. We learned that friends are more valuable than enemies. She gestured to the chamber around them. Look at what we have built together. Galactic trade. Peaceful contact between species. the sharing of knowledge and culture. Humans want to be part of this, not destroy it. Jake Stevens spoke up. On Earth, humans fought many wars. We learned from those wars that working together makes everyone stronger. War only brings suffering. Amy Collins added, we are good at fighting because we had to be. But we prefer building things, creating things, exploring new worlds and meeting new people. A Zephyrian delegate stood up next. Her scales were still red with nervousness. But what if someone attacks you? What if there is a war? Then, Ambassador Martinez said simply, the galaxy will see why it is better to have humans as friends than as enemies. The way she said it sent chills through the chamber. It was not a threat. It was just a fact. A very scary fact. Over the next hour, more questions came. The aliens wanted to understand this strange species that had just turned their worldview upside down. Do all humans think like this? Asked a granite delegate. Yes, Martinez replied. Every human child learns to solve problems creatively. It is how we survived on our world. Could you teach other species these skills? Asked an Etherian representative. Some skills can be taught, Martinez said. But the way humans think is part of who we are. It comes from millions of years of evolution. What about your weapons technology? Asked a nervous Iron Claw delegate. If you can do this with simple tools, what can you do with real weapons? Martinez's expression became very serious. That is exactly why we prefer to carry no weapons at all. Human weapons technology is advanced, very advanced. But we believe that showing up armed to a peaceful meeting sends the wrong message. The questions went on and on. Some species wanted to form closer alliances with humanity. Others wanted to make sure humans would never be their enemies. A few asked about trade agreements for human problem-solving expertise. But the biggest change was in how they looked at Jake and Amy. The two guards had not moved or spoken much during the discussion. They just stood there, watching and listening. But now every alien in the chamber understood what that meant. They were not just standing. They were analyzing, learning, planning. They were looking at every person, every object, every system in the chamber and figuring out how it all worked. Because that was what humans did. It was as natural to them as breathing. As the session wound down, Counselor Thakmer finally stood up. The great Krulex warrior looked older than he had that morning. His defeated guards sat silently behind him. I have a question, he said, his voice much quieter than before. Yes, Counselor, Martinez replied. Your guards defeated mine easily, but they did not hurt them. They could have killed my warriors, but they chose not to. Why? This question made the chamber completely silent. Everyone wanted to hear this answer. Amy Collins stepped forward. Because they were not our enemies, she said simply. They were just doing their job like we were doing ours. There was no reason to hurt them. But in combat, mercy can be weakness, Thakmer said. Confused. Jake Stevens shook his head. In human thinking, unnecessary violence is always weakness. Real strength is knowing when not to fight. Martinez added, humans learned long ago that the strongest warriors are the ones who protect others, not the ones who hurt others. Thakmer stared at them for a long moment. Then slowly he nodded. I think I understand. Your greatest weapon is not your ability to destroy. It is your choice not to destroy. Exactly, Martinez said. As the council session ended, aliens began filing out of the chamber. But they were not the same beings who had entered that morning. They had learned something important about humanity and about themselves. Some species immediately began planning closer relationships with Earth. The Etherian Collective offered to share their philosophical teachings. The Peaceful Garden Collective invited human scientists to study their agricultural methods. Even some of the warrior species wanted to learn more about human combat philosophy, but a few species began planning differently. They started thinking about defense against humans just in case. They had seen what 2 unarmed humans could do. They did not want to find out what an armed human military could accomplish. That as Jake, Amy, and Ambassador Martinez left the chamber. They could hear the aliens still talking behind them. The conversations would continue for days, maybe weeks. "Do you think they understand now?" Amy asked quietly. "Some of them do," Martinez replied. "The smart ones figured out that humans are most dangerous when we are peaceful. Because that means we choose to be peaceful," Jake smiled. "And choice is the most human thing of all." Behind them, the Galactic Council continued to buzz with conversation. The galaxy had learned something new about humanity that day. They had learned that the most terrifying words in any language might just be, "Don't worry, we come in peace." Because when humans said that, it meant they could afford to.